Video 24. April 22, 2011. Our friend Ed asks, I don't believe man landed on the moon in 1969 because of the radiation belt, Van Allen belt, surrounding the Earth, and the cosmic radiation. They would have been dead long before they would have reached the moon. None of the astronauts became ill due to radiation or got sick with cancer. Ed, they really landed there. The cosmic radiation is not the problem because it exists in the universe as a whole, which is why living things must have an appropriate environment to develop, in terms of conditioning necessary protection for your body type. For humanoids, the protection of the suit must have adequate protection against the corresponding emissions from their suns when outside the atmosphere, maintaining levels close to the original protection provided by the atmosphere of their planet of origin. Any planet that possesses an atmosphere filters out radiation and micrometeoroids, providing protection for the biology that will take the planet. The magnetic field is constant in all the planets, with or without atmosphere, since it is the factor generated by its own gravity, which keeps its position of equilibrium with the system to which it belongs. The magnetic field of the Moon as Earth's, in their proper proportions, protects from excess solar radiation, which is not enough to make it a conducive environment for your biology. There, you depend on costumes with a protection factor appropriate to be out of your ship. All magnetic fields, when exposed to radiation of any kind, generate an energy plasma layer, containing separated charged particles that are remnants of the diversion process. The process of diversion is what generates the plasma energy field because the radiation of particles being forced to divert. The factor of residual energy resulting from interaction of forces. This field can be with to a greater or lesser extent depending on the strength of emission from the sun in question. In the case of large solar flares, this layer can become so thick that it could involve your satellite zone and destroy them. The damage to the planet's surface will be proportional to the magnetic field pressure in each place of incident energy. We have no problem crossing or navigating these energy fields because we have the spacecraft's protective field that prevents any contact of particles. In the case of your ships, they also have UVB protection with insulating materials, not enough for the Van Allen belt but enough to stay in orbit. All that went through the Van Allen belt without adequate protective force field perished after a certain period. When you pass through the energy field that surrounds your planet, the spacecraft fuselage gives way to some amount of charged particles, as an airplane that receives an electrical discharge in a storm. In a quick pass, and if the astronauts are using protective outfits, there is no big problem, biologically speaking. But in radioactive energy fields like the Van Allen belt, it does not work. We have already noted several times, you working on your satellites and telescopes with the fuselage of your ships open. You truly deserve our appreciation for the courage to do what they do with your primitive equipment. It will be great when we can openly help your new society as a whole, to
reach the stars,
as you say. With respect to the moon, you have been there more times than has been announced for ordinary citizens. Now your governments are forbidden to build any type of installation there. But as the old pirates did, you are going there for some time with the reptilians. and you friends have used their base for your research in a scheme to draw back, and are doing the same at the new base of Mars. They have started to reach for the stars, not you, simple people, funders of projects. As you see, you really know little of what is happening. Now you know a little more because I'm telling you. You see, throughout our conversation, it's unofficial. If it generates any kind of speculation and questions, I prefer to stop it. I am no prophet or teacher. I answer your questions to appreciate being able to help in any way you can grasp the concept that you are truly living. Yes, we knew of the accident. This is a being of a thin race of Orion. Unfortunately had no time to send a distress signal and were not rescued and died of cold and attacked by wolves. The wreckage of the spacecraft is in possession of the military in Russia. We do not know if any of them was captured alive. I have good news for a change, perhaps that being of Sirius, who was captured in Brazil, returned to his community. He was placed at the disposal of its staff by the reptilians who work with your government. I do not know if he is the guy, but it seems that was the only crew that was lost. They took him to the lunar base where it was delivered. Friend Anthony still has doubts about HARP. He says there is evidence that they are using to cause earthquakes. If you look at the depth around the world on some days you will see maybe 20 quakes, many in one area, all the same exact depth. The depth is 10 kilometers, usually the signature, and has been for almost a year. Well, Anthony, let me explain in easy way. If all the power of the transmitted signals could be redirected to the surface of the planet, could certainly generate earthquakes and slip layers in the affected regions, but would require massive planet-orbiting reflectors to redirect the emissions. Something you have not and will not have time to do. The system as it is today, can cross streams at fixed points defined in the upper atmosphere, but cannot redirect the signals. Could not even blow up a building here on the surface, much less cause an earthquake. The only practical uses for this system are those that I mentioned in our previous conversation. On the tectonic events that range in that approximate depth, is due to plate thickness being small in these regions, where the first break than any other region. This is a normal symptom. Weaker sites are broken first. Mythi, in the Gulf of Aden, is still in operation, that portal of transport? If so, what are they doing? No, because the gate was moved. After leaking the information, many ships of your governments there have been tempted to identify, contact and film. It was an open portal for operations of the Pleiades, for broad detection of atomic weapons in the Middle East. Mythi, I have this movie about a UFO in Jerusalem in January. You could say what it is. This is one of hundreds of Pleiadian probes, examining the strange construction to check the inside. It seems they are becoming less worried about their actions being registered. Any day we park our spaceship in front of your house, it will not take long for you to notice sometime. Mythi, Spike asks, what you know about Dulce, New Mexico, and what was happening there? This is one of the major reptilian and gray bases that exist in North America. You already know this, but ask anyway. This base was already in use before the colonization of America by Europeans. What your government did was modernize it, in accordance with the reptilians. Between Greys and reptilians, there are more than 20,000 living underground in North American territory today. Mythi, Greg, a friend, asked me about an event that occurred in Antarctic in 1947, when there was a confrontation of humans with UFOs. I wonder what you can tell us if you know anything about it? That is an epic story. It's a good question. This was the third encounter of humans with the consortium that manages the base in Antarctic. In 1939, the Germans already had news of alien activities in the Antarctic, by observers from Argentina partners. These photos of UFOs were sent to Berlin, which organized an expedition to attempt a contact of closer relations with extraterrestrials. This German expedition, after many attempts to radio contact in Antarctic territory, found nothing, and tried an expedition to the center of the continent, also failing to succeed. The government ordered them not to return empty-handed, and they tried to attack a spaceship that had been watching them. Of course, they were captured and taken to the base since their submarines were sunk and any survivors from the encounter would have died anyway. They were invited to stay with the condition they could never return. And 48 men were adopted by Pleiadians. In 1947, the North American expedition decided to exploit rumors that the Germans were still operating at its base in Antarctic, and resolved to do a complete survey. Amidst this, the highest-ranking officer was chosen to be taken to meet an official from the Antarctic base to prevent major problems later. The official returned with a message to stay away from Antarctic with any type of weapon, and was given as an ultimatum. The base had observed all the barbarities of your Second Great War, including the nuclear detonation, and just wanted to keep them at a safe distance. Even after this warning, the US government, feeling that it was a Nazi installation, and that the admiral had been tricked, sent a fully armed squad to take the Antarctic by the supremacy of force. Needless to say what happened. The Antarctic base was serious about the ultimatum to thwart any attempts, and the attackers would have to live with the consequences. Even reluctantly, they counterattacked the squad and caused them to pull out completely damaged, as an example for all other governments. There were never any problems since. The Antarctic was declared an area of research, and no armed vessel has ever sailed back there.